Good morning, Branches. How's everybody doing out there? Here's my favorite table right over here. So, hello to everybody at home, too. It's time to come on back in if you're at home watching this. There's some great people here. It's great to see everybody. So, give us a flyby next Sunday. We're doing these at 10 o'clock now, as everybody knows. A lot of announcements. We've got... Is everybody with me, or is everybody overdone on fried dough from the fair? I think that's where I'm a little lethargic. Here we go. So the campout's coming up July 30th to August 1st. There are 5 spots left, so snag yours before it's too late. There's going to be cornhole, horseshoes. There's a church picnic on 7/31 from 11 to 3 at the campout site. So if you don't want to give up your perfectly good home and go camping for the weekend, you could blow on down there and join everybody for the church picnic too. So that's a good option. The other thing we have to announce is Vacation Bible School. So the Press Play Get in the Mix Vacation Bible School is now open for registration on the Branches app or via the website. So get that together. And then, drum roll, sort of, please. The women's retreat. That is coming up. For the women that go on this retreat, and the word retreat or surrender doesn't come to mind. It's more like pray and party and move on. So get out with the women's retreat. I hear such good things about that. Really great fellowship with the women in this community. That's going to be September 24th to 26th, so save the date. And again, the website and the app is a place to go for information on that. So anyway, here we are. We've got a great band, probably the second best band that Branches has up here. We've got really, really, really outgoing folks over here, and Alex, he's, really, I want everybody to pay attention to him today and just watch him play guitar. He's amazing. And then on the other side, Sandon. It's Sandon's 26th birthday today. But no, we've got a great band for you. We're going to have a great day at Branches. Let's turn it over to them.
If you guys want to stand, we're going to sing this morning. Grace, what have you done? Oh, murdered for me on that cross, accused in absence of wrong, my sin washed away in your blood, too much to make sense of it all. I know that your love breaks my fall. A scandal of grace, you died in my place, so my soul will live. Oh, to be like you, to give all I have just to know you. Jesus, there's no one beside you. Forever the hope in my heart. Won't sing down where is your state? There's a grace when the heart is under fire. Another way when the walls are closing in. When I look at the space between where I used to be and this reckoning, I know I will never be alone. There was another in the fire, standing next to me. There was another in the waters. He's holding back the seas. Should I ever need reminding of how I am set free? There is a cross that bears the burden of where another died for me. There was another in the fire. All my dead left for dead beneath the waters. I'm no longer a slave to my sin anymore. Should I fall in the space between what remains of me and this reckoning? Either way, I will bow to the things of this world. 'Cause I know I will never be alone. Hey, can we pray this morning? Dear God, we just come before you, Lord, that we say you are so worthy. God, we just come to lift our voice, God, to give our lives as an offering before you. God, just to say that you are so worthy of all the praise. God, I thank you that you see us where we're at. God, you see the things that we go through, Lord, and that you still love us. God, I thank you that your word says that it was the joy set before you to die on the cross for us. God, I thank you for making a way where there was no way. God, I thank you that you have gone before us, Lord, all the crooked places we could come and face with, God, I pray. And I thank you, God, that you've made those places straight. God, all the storms, God, even though you've ordained them, Father, I thank you that you'll never leave us or forsake us. So, God, this morning we just come to glorify you. We just come to worship you. In Jesus' name. Amen. There was a moment when the lights went out and death had claimed its victory. The King of love had given up his life. The darkest day in history. They're on a cross they made for sinners. For every curse his blood atoned. One final breath and it was finished. But not the end we could have known. For the earth began to shake, and the veil was torn. What a sacrifice was made, as the heavens roared. Come on, let's lift up our voice this morning and sing all hail. Oh, all hail King Jesus.
Good morning. Hey, all right, you're all here. Cool. I'm in here too. You guys see me, I'm here. But my name is Mike Curl, and we are continuing a conversation, but we're just passing the halfway point in our series 90. And the continuation is from last week's conversation. So if you missed last week, I encourage you to go online, go check that out, because we're just going to kind of go right through it. But I'm going to do a little bit of a recap first. If you're at home, you can watch it, but stay here and then watch it later. For now, though, I just kind of draw our attention back to, I don't have it today, but the table that we had here was kind of our simulation of a lunchroom, a cafeteria, right? As we're walking around with our tray, trying to find our place, trying to find tables that we should sit at, and definitely tables that we should not sit at. We're looking for that spot and that space where we can plant ourselves and hopefully get through the day. And what we're doing is we're looking for our people, right? We're trying to figure out who our people are, and by extension, we're trying to find out who our people aren't. And we're really good at this. It's a natural tendency we have. In fact, we said last week that we try to surround ourselves with people who like us, right? With people who will affirm or accept us for who we are. They will express to us, hey, I like you. In fact, if you tell me that you like me, I immediately like you back. And I don't even have to know you because you like me. This is good. This is natural. This is a normal thing that we do. But we also continue that even further. And besides looking for people who like us, we try to surround ourselves with people who are like us. And this is what we talked about last week, that we were dividing ourselves up, segmenting ourselves into subcultures. Remember the bronies? Anybody remember that? We don't have to go back into that. But the idea here is that we're looking for our group of people. And once we find our group, we start looking more and more like ourselves in that group. Right? We start to exclude people or divide ourselves away from people who don't necessarily like us and certainly aren't like us. And the problem with that, as we discussed last week, the problem with that is that Jesus wasn't like that. Jesus over and over again would go out of his way to find people who maybe didn't even like him, but certainly weren't like him. He's the Son of God. He's perfect. He had no sin, and he would constantly surround himself with people who were less, who society at that time would look at and say, you're rejected for a reason. We don't sit at your table. We don't invite you to sit at our table for a reason. And as we do that, we run into Jesus saying, hey, I'm not like that. But not only that, Jesus would say that he wouldn't like that. That he would see in us that behavior and he would say, guys, pause, time out. I don't like that. Don't do that. Don't be like that. And so that's where we left off last week was what do we do? How do we get to the point where we can expand our table, expand our moral circle, expand the number of people that we include in our kindness bubble, right? Because we'll naturally treat people who like us and who are like us with kindness, with better behavior. But people outside of that's a little bit more of a struggle. And so to help us with that, we want to expand our circle. That's our goal. That's our desire. But what about those people that weren't in our circle to begin with that suddenly are? What about those people that we know they're difficult to get along with, right? We know having a relationship with them will be difficult. It'll be tough. We're not going to agree. You want me, Jesus, to sit at a table and have a disagreement with somebody and still enjoy my lunch somehow? And Jesus would say, yeah, I did it all the time. Yeah, I did it all the time. I want you to do that. I want you to expand your circle. But we ask this question, how do I sit with somebody and not agree? How do I sit in that place and be okay? Well, today I want to continue last week's conversation. I want to go a little bit into the how. Now, I'll be the first one to admit, A, this won't be easy. And B, I don't have all the answers. Now, if you're walking out now and because of that news, I apologize. But I won't claim to be perfect. I won't claim that I understand everything there is to know about how to get this done. But I do know that there are some steps that we can take to start looking a bit more like Jesus so that when we have people sitting at our table that don't look like us and don't act like us and maybe don't even like us, that we can at least be able to disagree and still enjoy our lunch. Be able to be in a relationship with somebody and not have to see eye to eye all the time. And this is a wonderful challenge. It's a crazy challenge. And to help us along with that, I want to kind of explore what not to do first. And this will be good. So anybody like Bible trivia? Some of you in here are like, I hate Bible trivia. So, hey, good job, Mike. Separating the room already. No, so here we are, Bible trivia. Can anybody tell me who were the people that Jesus was most, we'll say, frustrated with, sometimes even angry with? Anybody just shout it out? Oh, perfect. Pharisees, that's right. It was the Pharisees. Right, so Pharisees, about 10 years ago, this word was actually very common in our modern language. Now, we don't have Pharisees as like a title. It's not a role that you can play. But we used to use this commonly to mean hypocritical, self-righteous jerk. Hey, Pharisee, right? You're such a Pharisee. Like, man, stop being such a Pharisee. Now, we don't say that as often nowadays, but literally less than 10 years ago, this was pretty common. It was an insult. It wasn't good. And the reason that Jesus was upset with this group of people, the teachers of the religious law, the Pharisees, the experts, people who at that time period would have looked a lot like me, would have been in my job as a pastor. This is going to be an uncomfortable talk. These were people who were abusing their power. These were people who had been given a job, who had been placed above the people in order to protect them, in order to guide them, and they were abusing that power. They were abusing that right, that position. And so Jesus, over and over again, would issue some very, we'll say, stern warnings to these people. He would not have the kindest words. I mean, at one point he called them a brood of vipers. Yeah, if I was called that by Jesus, I think I failed, right? I think I just, could pack my bags. I've failed, like it's over. But he would call them that. And so he had stern warnings, and he had things that he would issue to them. And so in one such case, in Matthew, the Gospel of Matthew, recorded by somebody who was there, witnessing Jesus, watching Jesus, listening to Jesus, and eventually recorded what Jesus did and said. In the Gospel of Matthew, we get a list of woes, and it starts off here. Now, you can imagine this is your Bible, and it goes further up with a list of woes, and it continues down. But this one is specifically targeted to the Pharisees, the teachers of the religious law. And he says, "Woe to you," warning, "woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites." I don't like being called a hypocrite. "You shut the door of the kingdom of heaven in people's faces." You're a hypocrite. You say it's supposed to be one way. You say that the law is supposed to do this, and we have to sacrifice this, and we have to do this in a specific way, and then you don't do that thing. And more specifically, you don't have the heart of the law in you. You're somebody who says that we need to behave this way, but you don't inside. And everybody on the outside can see it, but we can't do anything about it because you have all the power, all the control. And then when Jesus says you shut the door in the people's faces, their job as a Pharisee, as a teacher of the religious law, as the Levites, the people who looked after the temple, their job were door holders. They were supposed to be opening the door and ushering people in to the kingdom of heaven, into the presence of God, into relationship for eternity. They were supposed to be door holder, and they wound up being door closers, slamming the door in the face of people that they chose to reject, people who couldn't sit at their table, people who they would say, "No, move on. You need to sit. Maybe don't go to the school anymore. You don't belong at my table. You don't belong here." And Jesus would over and over again say to these people, "Stop doing that. That's not why I put you there. I put you there to be the door holder. I put you there to bring people to me, and you keep not letting them come close. You're rejecting them." And Jesus would issue another warning, and he would say this. He would say, "But you have neglected," which is not forgotten. It's literally, "I know, but I choose not to." You have neglected the more important matters of the law. Still part of the law: justice, mercy, and faithfulness. You Pharisees are doing something, but you're not doing the whole thing, right? You're missing the point. And Jesus would continue on, and he would say, "You should have practiced," so done, not neglected, practiced the latter, which is the justice, mercy, and faithfulness part, without neglecting, without forgetting the duty, without forgetting the sacrifice. You see, the Pharisees at that time, the religious leaders, the elite of that time, they would set up a whole system where you could actually sacrifice, or in essence pay for mercy. You could pay for justice. You could pay for faithfulness. They set up a whole system where you had certain sacrifices, and it's a tradition, and you just need to give this much and do this kind of thing and do that on this day, and then sure, you can have mercy. But mercy is a gift. If you pay for it, it's not mercy anymore. You've paid for it. You've paid for the free pass. And what Jesus is saying is you've neglected the fact that the law exists to show us how we don't measure up, how we fall short. And the heart behind the law is that then we can extend mercy and justice and faithfulness to people in our relationship with God. And so the Pharisees and the religious law, and even today, people doing this type of empty religious formalism will look at the second half. They'll say, yeah, let's do all the sacrificing. Let's put all the rules in place. And they forget the heart of the law. They forget what Jesus was after, which was mercy, justice, and faithfulness for people to come closer to him. Now, this offended the Pharisees, right? You can imagine they were a little ticked off because they have a whole view of what the Messiah is like. They have a whole view of what they're expecting when the Messiah comes. And the Messiah was supposed to be a military leader, was supposed to be somebody who's supposed to set the nation of Israel apart and above again to make them the special place where everybody is beneath them. And not just beneath them, but like cowed beneath them, like stepped on, crushed by Israel. Israel was supposed to rise up again and be the world power. And here they are, Rome's stepping on them, got a boot to their throat, and literally they're like, man, as soon as the Messiah comes, we were throwing this off. And this Jesus guy, he's doing all these crazy miracles. He's showing himself off. The crowds absolutely love him because he's accepting them and we've rejected them. But he's definitely nothing like what we expected. He keeps talking about including everybody in his plan, not just Israel. He keeps talking about forgiveness of sins for everyone. He keeps talking about how not just everybody has fallen short, but that everybody has an invitation to sit at his table. And the Pharisees are sitting there like, we rejected those people from our table. We don't eat with those people. Literally, we don't eat with those people. We reject them. They're not allowed. Some of them aren't even allowed in the temple. And it's the only place where they can commune with God. And so when they see Jesus doing this very thing, the opposite of what they're doing, the opposite of their focus, they get mad. And they try to get even. They start mocking him, and they start insulting him. They start trying to trap him. They start trying to trick Jesus into revealing how he's a fake and a fraud. And over again, he slips the net, right? Over and over again, he tricks them back, and he answers their questions, and they're like, oh, that was the right answer. And just over and over again, they're stymied and dumbfounded. And at some point, though, I think Jesus was kind of done with the mocking, kind of done with the insults, kind of done with the whole, like, what do you mean I can't eat with these people? You're supposed to be eating with these people. I'm doing the job I assigned you. And so he looks at them, and almost in response to all the mocking and all the things, and all the table talk, really, he looks at them and he says, it is not the healthy who need a doctor. It's the sick. And you're thinking, like, what does that have to do with dinner? In fact, what do you mean, the sick? I've got a well check planned at the end of the month. Like, am I still allowed to do that? Right? Can I do my physical? And I'll tell you, yes, you can do that. People can go to a doctor. You can go to the doctor and not be sick. But what's the reason a hospital exists? Why does it exist? What's it for? It's for people who aren't well and need to get well. They know they're not well and they need to get well. They go to the hospital. Jesus didn't come for the people who don't think they need anything. Jesus didn't come for the people who literally are like, I've got all this put together. I don't need nothing. I'm good. He came for the people who recognize that they've fallen short. They've missed the mark. They don't add up. They're not at the measure. They're the sick. They're the sinners. They're us. He came for people who recognize that we don't measure up. And for them, he's the doctor. For them, he's the hospital. And you can almost tell because he's kind of frustrated with Pharisees. That happened a lot. In fact, they're kind of the only group of people he was ever angry with. He threw their tables out of the synagogue, and he was very upset. But Jesus, you can almost feel this like teenage angst, even though he's 30, as he responds to them, and he says, why don't you go and learn what this means? It's like the head shake, like, go learn what this means. Anyway, sorry, that was awkward for me too. Sorry. He says, I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Go and learn what this in the law, what you have studied, what you have preached, what you have talked about, what you claim to know. Go learn that I desire mercy, not sacrifice. Go learn what that means. Go learn it. For I have not come to call the righteous or the self-righteous, the people who believe they have it all together, but I've come to call the sinners. This is the answer that he had to the mocking attitude, right? What's the opposite of mercy? It is that empty religious formalism. It is that I just go through the motions, but I don't care who it affects when I do that. I don't care who I run into when I try to accomplish my task or my list. And the Pharisees were stacking up lists, and they were stacking up tasks and things to do so that they didn't have to interact with the people. They intentionally were trying to avoid interacting with the people. But the law existed for the people. It existed to help the people. And they weren't doing the job. And so it was empty. And Jesus had had enough of it. But what drove their neglect? What drove their self-righteousness, right? What drives their self-righteousness? And the answer to that is this statement, right? When we have self-righteousness in us, we think this. It says, because of my actions, because of what I've done, because of what I am, who I am, where I'm from, how I've been educated, the people I hang out with, the people I don't hang out with, because of what I do, I'm just better than y'all. I'm better than others. That's an attitude of self-righteousness. And the worst part about it is all of us do this. This is that part in the sermon where you're all like, oh, great, Mike's going to make me feel bad. Yeah. but not that bad. It's not too bad, right? We all have self-righteousness in us. All of us have just a little bit or a nugget, or maybe it's a large, I'm not pointing fingers, but like some of us have this in us, and when we recognize that this is in us, that's a great place to start. But we all need to understand, all of us think at some level and in some way that we're just better than someone else. Something that we've done, something about us, maybe we've not measured up and we've missed the mark, so we just moved the mark. That's convenient, right? I failed until I told myself I succeeded. We do that. You're laughing. We do that. It's definitely true. We've got this all figured out, right? Like, how many people have you approached who look like the day's just not going great, and you say, hey, how are you doing? They're like, I'm fine. I'm good. And like, it's almost like the face changed. Like, you saw they weren't okay, and then suddenly they were. It's like, whoa, that's cool. How do you do that? Because that's not reality. We all have this in us. We all pretend. We all put on a mask, and we wear a mask. And Jesus is coming to the people who have been willing to reveal their face to him, who've willing to set aside their self-righteousness and to recognize that they have a need, that they need mercy. And the cool thing about mercy is that it comes to those who need it. When you recognize that you have a need for mercy, you are primed. You're that pump ready to just send out water and to receive mercy because you're the person who's going to be able to receive it. But by contrast, the opposite of that is that self-righteous people are unable to see their need for mercy. They've got it all figured out. When we're sitting in that spot when we're wearing our mask, we literally are saying to ourselves, I'm okay and I don't need anything. I don't need help. I never make mistakes. I didn't speed this morning. Don't raise your hand. I did. I'm perfect. Maybe not in every place, but the places that matter, I'm perfect. I pet kittens this morning, and I definitely donated some money, and I'm good enough. And we're trying to stack up our goods and our do goods and our do rights and trying to balance out our wrongs and where we haven't measured up and where we've not made it. And the problem is, and I think for most of us in the room who are older, we've kind of figured this out. You can't do enough good to erase the bad. It still exists. The part of us that isn't perfect, the part of us that falls short, the part of us that maybe is a little too quick with the temper, the part of us that maybe has taken things that weren't ours, the part of us that maybe has touched people that shouldn't have, that part of us still exists. And no matter how much we try to erase that by stacking up good, by sacrificing, creating levels that we can step up on and feel like we're doing great, it doesn't erase or change what happened, what's inside. And until we recognize that, until we see that in ourselves, keep making life better, keep doing that. But until we recognize our need, the area where we've fallen short, our need for mercy, we won't get it because we reject it. We send it away. Now, I wanted a cool and cute way to figure out how to remember that because it's a little wordy as it is right now. Like, mercy comes to those who need it, and self-righteous people it's complicated. So I was trying to wordsmith this thing, right? Just to hey, what's a cute phrase? And I came up with a few iterations. We'll try them out. So the first one is that you can't pass on something that you don't yourself possess. It's not much better, if I'll be honest. But this is like second grade math, right? Like this is like, hey, I want to hand you this TV, but I'm going to walk towards you without it in my hands, and I'm going to hand you the TV. That doesn't work. I don't possess it. It's second grade math. Like, we get this, right? That makes sense. This is easy to understand, but it's a little complicated. So we tried a different one. We went forward and we said, you can't extend what you haven't experienced. I love alliteration. So the E's, you guys see that? Just line right up. It's great, right? Like, if you guys are taking notes, this is the one. Maybe not, because not many people use the word extend, like I extend my arm. You can't extend what you haven't experienced. But this is extremely important. This concept here of experience is like, if you haven't experienced mercy, maybe you don't actually know how to extend mercy. Maybe you don't recognize that you've fallen short because you haven't quite received the gift and what it was and what the weight that was lifted from you was. So we went even simpler this morning, and we decided to go, if you ain't got it, you can't give it. If you ain't got it, can't give it. I did this for like Jim and the other grammar, like people who love grammar in here. They're twitching in their seats, and you're welcome this morning. I do apologize for that. But this just illustrates this idea of going through these iterations and trying to come up with like the phrase and the piece of it. This just comes to mind of like, I need a way, and so hopefully you guys need a way as well, to just illustrate, to remember what it is. And so when I was thinking like, how can I remind myself about mercy, about the gift of mercy, about the what comes to me of mercy and how it feels. And so I immediately thought of my telescope. I'm a nerd, so you're in for this now. Like, you guys decided to sit here. Is that an ETX 90? It's an ETX 90, that's right. A Meade ETX 90 with the Telestar system. It's true, he read my notes. So, this is the ETX 90. It's a blurry picture. It's not, it's not great. But this is the actual telescope I have. Now, when I was in college, I was studying astrophysics and astronomy, and so I was a space nerd already. And I got to use 3-foot telescope at school. I got to use some 18-inch telescopes, just exploring the universe and doing a lot of cool stuff. But over and over again, I would hear from my professors and the grad students who were teaching us that there's just something different about doing the work with your equipment, about going through and actually looking and exploring with your stuff. There's just something different. And so at one point, my smoking hot girlfriend at the time, who's now my smoking hot wife, yeah, same person, I did it. We went out actually, and we bought a telescope. She bought me a telescope. This was a gift to me. And so I was super excited, because I like new stuff. Like, I'm just a fan of new stuff. It doesn't really matter what it is. If it plugs in, it's even better. And so this plugs in, but we got it home, and I really had no time to read the manual, so we threw that out. And so, we're just I didn't throw it out, but I didn't read it. And we've got this industrial, it's way too big of a tripod for this. This telescope's about this big, and the tripod is it's huge. Anyway, so we're setting that up on the deck, and we're in Colorado. Great viewing skies in Colorado most of the year. And so we're in Colorado, we're out on the deck, and we're setting the tripod up and getting the telescope on there. We figured out how screws work, and so that's on there now, and it's not going to fall off. But we don't know how to make it point itself, because again, that was in the manual, and there's no time for that. So, now it's just time to find something. Let's just look through it. Let's see how cool this is. And so, you get it loose, and you're doing, the whole parallel thing. I don't know if you guys ever tried to, sight something that's super exact, and you're trying to do it with your eyes. Yeah, so we're all right, let's look up in space, and, try and find something cool. And, I don't know, am I, looking in the right place? And just so you know, my deck, there was on the back side of it, there was another apartment building that went really high. And then around our building were trees. And so I had, a postcard-sized hole in the sky to, find something cool. And there were a couple, bright, pointy things, I think they call them stars, that were up there. And, we're just trying to find, I'm, just doing that, really awkward, you just, squatted, and your legs are burning. You're like, why am I doing this? Oh, it's because it's going to be cool. And we're pointing, and you look in it, nothing. We're like, oh, maybe it's the telescope, right? So you mess with the focus knob, and you're looking around, you're look in it, nothing. And you're like, well, what if we try pointing at that? So we turn it around, eyeballing, look in that, and then we saw this. Now I'll admit this isn't an actual picture, because at that time I was not smart enough to hook up a camera to it. But this is kind of how it looked. Super blurry, Now, for those of you in the back, it's what we're looking at is this next one. We're looking at Saturn. And in the telescope on that day, the very first time looking through the telescope that I was given to me as a gift, and I experienced, not this beautiful picture, but I experienced Saturn, and I even experienced the moon in my telescope on that day, I was hooked. You wouldn't believe, suddenly I got it. Suddenly I understood the lingo that my professors and my grad students were talking about. Suddenly I understood what was so special about doing it yourself, about going on that self-discovery. I had received a gift that I had, it just welled up inside of me, and I became even more of a nerd. But now I was a nerd that I talked to people about it. I was so excited I would share that with people. I started teaching and doing and just telling people way too much about space and way too much about science and all the fun things for me. And it was all because I was given a gift that I suddenly understood what it was that I wanted to express. And Jesus is looking at us and he's saying, look, I want you to catch this. Once you've tasted mercy, don't you dare forget what that tasted like, because that's what you're going to pay forward. That's what you're going to be able to express to others. Don't forget that feeling of mercy. When we've come to the point where we recognize our shortcomings, where we recognize that we've fallen short, where we recognize that we're sinners, right? That there's a standard and we haven't met it, and we're not going to meet it on our own. When we recognize that, it can feel really low. It can feel crushing. In fact, it's a weight placed upon our shoulders. It's the burden of sin, and it leads to death. That's normal. But mercy comes in, and it counterweights that, and it picks it up. And it says, you don't owe that now. You have had mercy extended to you. And so for me, this is my illustration, right? This is what helps me remember about mercy. And I'll admit, I forget sometimes to extend mercy. My table gets small again, I got to get it big again. But for you in here, you may have your own picture. But Jesus painted a picture for his audience at that time. And I want to drive into that because Jesus did a lot of teaching that's kind of good at it. And he was a master illustrator. He was a master of somebody who could take a concept and he could make it palatable and understandable for his audience. And he did that through the teaching tool of a parable. Now, a parable, for those of you who heard the word but you haven't really thought about what it means, parable is two words stuck together. It's para, meaning like next to or beside. It's where we get the word parallel from. So two lines, parallel, they're parallel lines. And then the second word is balo, which is like a bola, it's like a hunting weapon, but balo is the verb to throw. So if you can imagine, Jesus would take a concept that everybody knew, a truth or a way of talking or a story element that everybody knew, and he would take right alongside it, he would throw his truth. He would throw the truth that he was wanting them to understand. And while the world's way was aiming at a specific target, and they all knew and expected that, Jesus has always landed at the kingdom of heaven, at the truth that was different, the truth that was the kingdom of heaven. And so he illustrated this concept of mercy this way. He said, for the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. Now, this is a pretty normal, like, they would understand this whole idea of like, yeah, a king, he's got servants, they're out doing stuff, investing things, maybe they borrowed some stuff. It's time to settle accounts, right? And so as he began the settlement process, a man who owed him 10,000 bags of gold. Some of you have converted that into Bitcoin already. It's like 2 or something. But like literally 10,000. This is an unpayable sum, right? This is something where like, who's going to be able to pay this back? And this servant didn't walk in to settle his account. He was brought in, right? So there's some recognition here already of like, I done bad and it's not going to go good, right? And so Jesus continues the story in full recognition of an unpayable debt. And he says, since he was not able to pay, we get that. 10,000 bags of gold. It's unreasonable. Like, that's a bad loan. The master ordered that he and his wife and his children and everything that he owned be sold to try and recoup some of that cost, to try and repay some of that debt. Now, his audience at this time, as we may be a little bit offended by this notion of you sold him into slavery over money, that's ridiculous. Like, what? What are you doing? At this time, this is completely normal. This is that parallel truth, the para that Jesus is using. Everybody's familiar with the way the world works at this time. This is how it works. If you can't pay, you pay with you. Right? You go into slavery. Now, slavery, admittedly, like there was an opportunity possibly to pay it back, but it would be difficult to do so. You're pretty much in it for life. 10,000 bags of gold, that's a lot, right? So he's trying to recoup the cost. The king, this is expected. The audience is okay with this. And it continues. And it says, at this, the servant, so he's now come to a recognition, the servant falls on his knees before the king, before the master. And he says, be patient with me. Please be patient with me. And he begs. How many of us have been too proud to beg in most of our lives? You can raise your hands, everybody. But how many of us have begged when we decided that it just wasn't worth being too proud to beg? When we recognized that there was something that we had done or something that we wanted or something that we really, really needed not to happen, that we dropped to our knees proverbially and we begged for it not to come to pass. That's where he's at. He recognizes, I have 10,000 bags of gold. I have my entire life. I have my family. I have everything I own and am leveraged on this, and I'm about to lose all of it. Why wouldn't you beg? Well, at that point, you got nothing to lose. So he begs. He says, be patient with me, and I will pay back everything. Is that true? Is he going to pay back everything? No. But he'll say and do anything to get out of the situation, as each and every one of us would. Everyone in here would say, yeah, I done messed up. And I want to make it right. Even though deep down we recognize we can't. We can't make it right. And what we're begging for is we're begging for mercy. And so, the servant's master took pity on him. He looked at this wretched creature before him who had over-leveraged. And imagine the king has probably admitted to himself he's made a bad loan there. But the other guys made a terrible borrow. He took pity on him, and he canceled the debt. And he let him go. Now, the audience at Jesus' time would have been looking at this, and they would have been thinking like, that's, okay, it's unexpected, but not out of the realm of reality. Like, Jesus, you're still telling us a story we expect or that we can hear. It's got a nice ending. Like, that's a pretty great ending. Like, is the world going to be like this under you, Jesus? Is it going to be like we get pity and then everything's fine? Because I think we can get on board with that. I think a lot of us are okay with that. And Jesus, in his great fashion, isn't sending his truth to the same target. And so he's going beyond it. And what he does is my favorite Bible word, which is but. He says, but when that servant went out, the forgiven servant, so we'll call him now, he found one of his fellow servants. And this guy owed him 100 silver coins. It would be like you owe somebody your entire house, but somebody else owes you $50. And somebody just told you your house, you don't owe on it anymore. It's yours. Enjoy. Have fun. Live out your life. Have a good one. But the guy who has $50, well, he comes to you. Maybe you just had a bad day. But the forgiven servant, he grabs this new servant, right? He grabbed the servant, and he began to choke him. He was filled with so much rage about this debt owed to him that he actually laid his hands on this guy. And he demanded, pay it back, and pay it back now. Now, at this time, the people who are listening to Jesus' story, they're going to be like, yeah, I don't know if he should have choked him, but everything this forgiven servant is doing is legal. He's demanding payment. At that time, there weren't terms on a loan. Literally, you could lend money to somebody, and then you could, 2 minutes later, demand it back. You could literally just put somebody into debt permanently by loaning them something, and then immediately demanding it back, knowing they couldn't pay it. Knowing that the reason that they borrowed it was that they could not pay you back. This was legal. This was normal. And so, while on any other day, his audience would have been like, all right, like we get where the servant's coming from. He probably shouldn't have choked him, but we're getting that. They did, though. They heard the first half of the story, as we did, about what the king did for that servant. Now, his fellow servant fell to his knees. This sounds really familiar. And he begged him. It's almost a mirror, right? He says, be patient with me and I'll pay it back. He's begging, same thing. Now, his 100 silver coins for this guy probably was not an unpayable amount. He's probably looking at like, this debt wouldn't have caused me to beg, wouldn't have caused me to debt. But getting choked about it is like, I'm in serious trouble now because this is more serious than I thought. Shoot, I need mercy. So he's begging for mercy. But the forgiven servant refused to give it. And instead, he went off and had the man thrown into prison, completely legal, until he could pay the debt. Anybody think you can pay that debt while you're in prison? He basically condemned this guy to die, a pauper, condemned him to die for this small debt. It's lawful, yep. But his audience, just as us, wouldn't have been happy with this result. Wouldn't have looked at this and said, you know what? That makes perfect sense. No, they know what the forgiven servant had been given. They knew that he had been given the gift of mercy for something there was no way he deserved, but he was given it. And so their expectation on his future behavior is a little different than what the law said. There was a heart needed to go along with it. And so when the other servants heard about this and when they saw what had happened, they were outraged, as his audience and as we would be, and went and told their master everything that had happened, left no detail out. And so then the master called the servant in. He called him in. He didn't bring him in. The servant probably thinking, I'm doing pretty good. I was forgiven all this debt. Maybe he's going to loan me more money. I don't know. Walked in, and this is how he's greeted. You wicked servant. I canceled all that debt of yours because you begged me. I canceled that debt because you needed mercy, and I provided that to you. Shouldn't you have had mercy on your fellow servant? Shouldn't you have paid that forward? Shouldn't you have recognized that when you were invited to sit at the table with Jesus, that you weren't measuring up, that you weren't adding up? Shouldn't you then, when you have your table and trying to expand that, extend mercy to the people that are coming to you because of what you've received? I received a gift of a telescope, and I understand that taste of mercy. Shouldn't I have this idea in my mind that I should be extending mercy as much as possible? That's what the king is saying to the servant. And so in rage, Enraged in anger, his master handed him over to the jailers to be tortured until he should pay back all he owed. Can he pay now? No, it's too late. It's too late. You see, until you experience the weight of mercy, you'll never be able to extend the gift of mercy. Until you recognize for yourself that you are in need of mercy, that you don't add up, until you understand that, you won't be able to extend the gift. But until you embrace your need of mercy, you'll never experience the weight. Right? If you don't recognize, if you don't embrace, if you don't hold on to the fact that, oh my gosh, I actually have a need for mercy. I need a Savior. I need somebody to come in because I can't do this on my own, because I don't measure up. Until you do that, you won't be able to expand your table successfully. You won't be able to expand your circle of kindness successfully. And if you're not a Jesus follower in here, I'm still talking to you today, because whether or not you like Jesus, whether or not you think this is right, I think we can all get behind the fact that if all of us treated more people, even outside of our circles, with kindness, the world would be better. I think all of us can get behind the fact that if we lived a bit more like Jesus, regardless of whether he's the Son of God or not, that life would be better. Until we embrace our need, until we recognize that we've fallen short and we need mercy, until we extend that gift to other people, we're always going to be sitting at a table that's smaller than it should be with people who've been rejected. So have you experienced the weight of mercy? Have you experienced this in your life? Now, I thought maybe I'd just end it there, right? Hard end and just go from there. But a question kept nagging at me. It was like, Mike, if I actually go to apply this, if I actually go to do this, if I'm a boss at a company and I've got somebody who shows up late all the time, and if I'm a teacher and I've got students who don't turn things in, how much mercy should I extend? When is it enough? Is it 10,000 bags enough? Or is it like, the answer is 12? And honestly, I don't know. I don't know. But I do know that Jesus extended mercy to the people who nailed him on the cross. I do know that Jesus extended mercy to the soldiers who flayed his back open, who peeled his skin apart on his back and bled all over, and then rubbed thorn bushes into his head as a crown in mock, and he extended mercy to them. I do know that when I was speeding this morning, sorry, and maybe when you did that thing yesterday, or you remember that thing that happened in college, that Jesus, while he was on the cross, knew that was happening and extended mercy to you anyway for that. So I don't know how much mercy. I don't know. There's bound to be a limit. Except God seems to have no limit for the mercy that he's extended to us. And he's called us to be like him at our table. He's called us to be like him when we expand our circles and when we extend an invitation to people who aren't like us, who maybe don't even like us, and who definitely don't agree with us, regardless of your stance on something. I don't care what it is. Regardless of our stance on something, we need to be extending mercy to other people. Because that's the only way we're going to be able to expand our circles out to include more people into our kindness. So ask yourself this question every day. Am I a merciful person? Am I someone who extends mercy naturally? Am I someone who's willing to go out of my way to set aside something I'm owed? The king was owed 10,000 bags of gold. He set it aside and extended mercy. Jesus was owed fealty. He was owed the death of everybody who tortured him, but he extended mercy to them instead. Am I a merciful person? Am I willing to take that mask off? And am I willing to say, hey, you can sit at my table. Let's have lunch. God, thank you so much for today. Thank you for this opportunity that we have to come together on a Sunday. Thank you for this time that we get to spend together. Thank you that you taught us and that you teach us and that you continue to lean into us, God, that you don't let us go. Thank you so much for giving us a chance to extend mercy to those because you extended mercy to us. And thank you for the reminder of that. God, continue to help us ask that question of, am I a merciful person? And Lord, help us to answer that question with a yes. We love you, Lord. Amen.
We'll stay. We're going to sing one more song. desperation, I turned to heaven and spoke your name into the night. Then through the darkness, your loving kindness tore through the shadows of my soul. The work is finished, the end is written. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Who could imagine so great a mercy? What heart could fathom such boundless grace? The God of ages stepped down from glory to wear my sin and bear my shame. The cross has spoken, I am forgiven. The King of Kings calls me his own. Beautiful Savior, I'm yours forever. Oh, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Oh, hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Oh, hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to breathe, and out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. Then came the morning that sealed the promise. Your buried body began to reign, and out of the silence, the roaring lion declared the grave has no claim on me. 'Cause Jesus, yours is the victory. Oh, hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Oh, hallelujah, praise the one who set me free. Hallelujah, death has lost its grip on me. You have broken every chain. There's salvation in your name, Jesus Christ, my living hope. Jesus Christ, my living hope. Oh my God, you're my living hope. Yes, you are. Hey, God bless you, branches. We'll see you next week. Go be blessed. We look forward to seeing you next week. God bless.